hospitals have been full of patients infected with COVID-19. If a nurse attending a patient gets infected with it, will it be possible to compensate it for such situation?
So I understand you have a question for me.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you compensate an employee when he gets ill at the workplace?
Okay, and that's a really good question. So one of the things that we try to do is we try to gather as much medical evidence as we can, along with all the evidence that we can get from the employer and the conditions surrounding the employment to help us put together an idea of how the illness came about. And in fact, if the work was a contributing factor to the illnesses so that it can be attributed to it and therefore have a successful workers' compensation claim.
Also, there are some unfortunate cases where the employee passed away due to the injuries. Is it possible to compensate the family for their loss?
And that's another good question, because some of the illnesses such as COVID-19, valley fever, and cancer, they sometimes do result in death. And in workers' compensation, although the benefits are only payable to the person who is injured, there is one exception, and that exception is when someone passes away from an industrial injury or an industrial accident, their dependents can put a claim for workers' compensation benefits. So that will be the only exception, when someone other than the injured person can file a claim for those benefits. But it really depends a lot. The area of death benefits really becomes a whole different area of law, because now we're dealing to finding out as to who can be a potential dependent, and if they are dependents, if they are a total dependent or a partial dependent. But it is possible in order for a family of a decedent to file a claim for workers' compensation benefits.
Some injuries develop over a period of time. Would it be possible to compensate a worker if that injury happens in the work state outside of the working place?
So yes, I think that's a question that a lot of people have. I think here in Kern County, I see that a lot with farm workers and people that switch employers often, and then they develop some sort of injury, especially cumulative injury, and they're not quite sure if it happened with this employer or a prior employer or something like that. For that type of injury, which does happen, we do need to develop a lot of medical discovery. So we would need to go to a doctor to try to figure out what period of time was the one that really caused the injury. And under the workers' compensation system, we see that if it is a long period of time and several employers and several insurance companies are basically liable for it, the insurance company that holds the last year of insurance is the one that's responsible. That insurance company can then go back, and once the case is settled, they can go back and try to get contribution from all the other insurance companies that were also part of it. But part of what that system does is that it makes it easier for the person, so they only have to litigate their case against one insurance company. But also that insurance company is not on the hook for 100% of it. They have the right to go back and seek contribution for every insurance company that technically was part of that injurious exposure period.
Well, I'm a nursing student, and as I know, through the pandemic, hospitals have been full of patients infected with COVID-19. If a nurse attending a patient gets infected with it, will it be possible to compensate it for such situation?
Yes. So like I said, because we have that medical discovery system, if the person files a workers' compensation claim and through the medical discovery, it is found that it is more likely than not that he or she contracted COVID-19 through the employment, then it can be compensable. And he or she may be able to benefit from temporary disability, medical treatment, permanent disability, and in some occasions, it can even be vocational services if the person is unable to go back to work.
Thank you so much for answering my question. The information has been very useful.
Well, thank you so much for the question. It was a great question. I hope that I was able to provide you with some answers.